Good day to you. Good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are from. My name is Phil Tarbox, National Sales Manager for Business Solutions for D-Link, and thank you very much for joining us today for the third in this technical training on switching. We've had a great time sharing some information with you over the last month, and certainly that is the case today as well with regards to the technical training that we'll be going through today. So this session is being recorded. It will be available for you to catch up on a little bit later. There will be an email sent out to everybody that has attended the session live, but you can also catch that on the D-Link Australia YouTube channel as well. Just in YouTube, search for D-Link Australia or D-Link New Zealand, and that'll take you into our YouTube channel. Go into playlists, and there's a playlist in there called webinars, and you can catch up on any of the webinars that we've run. We've run two training sessions prior to this one on switching. There's also been some other sessions regarding switching, 4G, 5G technology, Nucleus Connect, and Nucleus Cloud. So please feel free to go and take a look at those at your leisure as well. So it's a good morning in Melbourne, Australia, to Aaron Bilton. Aaron, great to hear you this morning.
Morning.
And we're looking forward to hearing and seeing what you've got to show us today about switching, about the switch training today as well. So without any further ado, let's get started. So before we get into training, certainly it would be remiss of me not to talk about the D-Link for Business Partner Program, which is available both in Australia and also in New Zealand. If you are not yet a registered partner, there's some great reasons to become a D-Link Rewards partner. Some really generous upfront discounts available on product. There's incentives with e-gift cards available for achieving certain amounts of revenue within a calendar quarter. You get access to our very friendly pre-sales engineers, Aaron, who you'll be hearing from today, and David Urbano as well. David ran our switch session just a couple of weeks ago. You also get access to D-Link's priority technical support, where you get to speak or communicate directly with a D-Link level 2, level 3 engineer based out of our Australia, New Zealand head office in Sydney. So if you're not yet signed up, please do so at dlink.com.au/rewards or dlink.co.nz/rewards. Of course, all of our product is available through our distribution partners, with whom we're very, very grateful to work with. In both Australia and New Zealand. We work with Ingram Micro and Cinex, and in Australia, we've got additional distributors in Blue Chip Infotech, EdSys, Hills, Multimedia Technology, and Pacific Datacom. I'm sure most of you have got trading accounts with any of those distributors. Okay, so I'm now going to pass over to Aaron, who'll give us a run through the agenda and get started on today's training session. Aaron, over to you.
And a welcome to all. Well, today on the third part of this series, we're going to take you through a bit of spanning tree and loopback detection. Yeah, it's going to be more of a brief overview for you because we do cover this fully in our DCNE course. That's a full day thing in relation to switching. But we will go through today loops on networks. I'll just pop the pointer on here and give you a bit of a laser thing. We're going to go loops on networks. I'll give you some examples of what I've seen. I've seen some very amazing ones, I must say. We'll go through STP applications, sort of how we can use it to avoid loops and what we can use for redundant connections. Different versions of STP, because there's standard, fast, multiple. I'll go through a setup example of how to set up STP using our switches through the web GUI interface. And I'll do the same again on the loopback detection. we will go through the configuration for the your spanning tree configuration, loopback detection configuration, and I will be giving you a live demonstration of a looped network whilst staying on a Zoom call. I have tested it many times, it has worked, so we will no doubt see. So, spanning tree. What is a loop? Now, it's basically when you've got more than one path to another location. On a layer 2 network, we can't do that. If we do that, we cause a broadcast storm. Now, from switch to switch communication, there is a BPDU packet. That BPDU packet is passed from switch to switch and vice versa. And if you do that with a multiple loop configuration, it's going to pass a BPDU packet to this switch. This switch is going to pass one back to here. This is going to pass it down to here, and it's going to snowball. When it snowballs, it's very CPU intensive traffic, and there's no time to live on a BPDU packet. So ultimately, you have a big snowball effect. The CPU of the switch gets too much under load, and you'll lose communication. That leads to corrupt MAC address tables. It'll do duplicate frames, you'll see if you're using Wireshark, and basically just a big broadcast storm. So in front of us here, we can see 3 examples. So first one, so basically switch to switch to switch and back again. That's obviously a loop. Example 2, switch to switch, just one switch to another and 2 cables. That'll cause a broadcast storm. And then we've got the third example here where we've looped the same switch. That will also cause a broadcast storm, and if that's connected to another switch, it's going to feed it back into the network. When this happens, it's not a very good experience for all. So to avoid the loops, we can use spanning tree. Spanning tree can physically block the last worst cost connection by going through the protocol and disconnecting the port. Now we can use this for redundant links. So basically, if say the other link disappears, it can re-establish the broken link from prior and bring your network back up. Now this can be done with auto configuration, and it can also be done manually by setting all the values as well. It's a pretty handy protocol. Now, we covered LACP previously. That's another protocol we could use instead of STP. And there's also ERPS. I think that's Ethernet Ring Protection System. That can also be done in the same type of fashion. But also when you're using those other protocols, we can't use spanning tree on those ports because it does conflict. It's also the same with loopback detection. If we're using loopback detection on a port, we can't use spanning tree on that port. So, oh, sorry, I hear someone breathing.
Aaron, if you could just pause for just a second. There's just a couple of people have asked if you could be able to perhaps try and speak a little bit louder. I'm assuming you're using the same setup that we had yesterday.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, if you could just maybe raise your voice a fraction, that would be great.
I can do this. So, spanning tree. We have 3 different methods. We've got STP being 802.1d. That's standard. It's got a very slow convergence, so it can be up to a minute, typically 50 seconds. We've got rapid spanning tree. That's 802.1w. That removes the, the listening component. So that'll speed up the process down to 1 second. And then we've got multiple spanning tree if we're using VLANs. Because basically if we're using VLANs and we've got multiple links on the same switch, multiple links could be disconnected and that will drop off your VLANs. So setting it up, not very difficult. It depends on how large your network is. If you're using a very, very large network, it is a better idea to set your bridge priorities and possibly your port cost. So basically in our switch, for today's example, we can go into our switch, we can go to layer 2 functions, we go to STP, we turn it on, we choose RSTP for rapid, and we leave the bridge priority as default. As the red square says. Again, then we go to the port settings. Now, in port settings, it's important, well, the best practice for us is when we enable spanning tree on uplink ports. We then set whatever ports are edge, meaning plugging a PC into or somewhere where a loop's not going to generally happen, as an edge port. That's also more advisable when you've got, say, a phone plugged into it. If you have a phone with a PC plugged into it and the PC turns off, it's going to initiate like an STP rebuild, and that's going to multicast your networks. If you don't set the edge ports, you're going to see a lot of storm activity briefly. So from here, we can go ports 1 to 28, enable. External costs. Oh, now just a note on this, the external cost here in relation to priority, external cost takes precedence over priority. But external cost is also based on port speed. Obviously, the slower the port, the more cost it is going to be. And yes, best practice, anything that's on an edge, set it to auto or true. Loopback detection is a little bit different. Now, on most of our D-Link managed switches, our loopback detection is chip-based. So it's on the board and it operates very similarly, but the one benefit is loopback detection can deal with a single port of broadcast, whereas STP can't.
Just before you go on, Aaron, just got a question here from Craig. Just regarding the edge ports for the phone issue.
Oh, yes.
There's still a few questions coming through about the your audio as well. You're coming through loud and clear on my laptop and the other laptops of my colleagues here at D-Link, but there's a bit of feedback that it's perhaps not as good as it might be. So are you able to go back to the elaborating on edge ports for phones?
Okay. Yes. Now with phones, would you like me to change my audio to the web camera?
Let's give that a go.
Not a problem. Okay, I should be on the camera now.
Okay, maybe we can get some comments there as to how Aaron's going on that one.
All right. Now, what I've seen out in the field, if you have a large volume of phones with PCs plugged into them, when someone, like in the morning, when you've got a group of people turning their computers on, the port state changes. And if it changes and it's not set to an edge port, it's going to initiate like a rebuild for the spanning tree. And it's like a very large broadcast briefly for about up to 30 seconds. And it'll absolutely decimate your network in the meantime. And if you're doing, and if it's not, it'll do it per port. So if one does it, it'll do it. And if you've got another 30 people doing it, it's going to keep redoing it. So you're going to see an awful lot of activity. Hope that clears things up a little bit.
Great, thanks, Aaron.
Okay, is the audio a bit better? No bad comments yet?
We're getting lots of thumbs up, yep.
Ah, beauty. Okay, now loopback detection is one of my personal favorites. That's how I'm protecting my network today, because I'm going to be looping it. Now I have multiple VLANs in my house, and I've got a test VLAN set up with my switches in the back here. And I'm going to loop that VLAN and still remain with network activity, which is a bit of fun. So loopback detection, there's two versions. There's version 2 and there's version 4. Version 2 is port-based. Version 4 is VLAN based. So in this case, we don't explain it on this slide here, but in relation to here, we can have a loop network on a single switch down below, and loopback detection will physically block sensitive, that port on that switch there, stopping the broadcast storm. But STP can't do that. This is why we use loopback detection on all of our edge ports, and we use STP on our uplink ports. We can use STP Oh, sorry.
Aaron, we've just got a question here. I'm not sure exactly who it has come from. It's from somebody doing IT support, which could be just about anybody. Good morning to you. Is there a single document that covers best practice for STP loopback detection from D-Link?
Yes, best bet, get in contact with me with my details at the end of the preso. You'll have my email address there. So shoot us an email and I'll send you a snippet of the best practice training that we do.
Great question. Thanks for that one.
Yeah, no, that is a good question, actually. Okay. Now, just before I do, oh, sorry, there we go. Now, what this is going to lead me into an example that I've seen at a school. Now, I was called into a school because the multifunction printers and the Wi-Fi was starting to fail. Now, if you loop your network, the first two things that are going to be affected is your Wi-Fi and is definitely your multifunction print devices like printers. Now, to cut a long story short, we had to find the loop. Now, if anyone hasn't tried to find a loop before in a larger organization, it's not the easiest process. You must start at the core switch. You start up here. You then, if you had fibers linking other parts of other buildings or different racks, you disconnect those first, one by one, and wait to see if your flashing of your lights slows down. If that does slow down, then you proceed to that rack. Leave it disconnected at that stage, then unplug port by port by port by port till you find it. Now, once you found it, happy days, then you can turn on loopback detection and know where it is. But in this case, this school, they had a little delinquent child who actually abused a PC under a desk. They abused it so much that the LAN cable that was plugged into the connector on the motherboard physically got bent and damaged and shorted the pins out. Now that caused a loop on the network card. So a single cable loop was fed back into a switch. So that was a very, very, very difficult one to find. It took quite a long time to find. Now, if we had loopback detection turned on, that would have just turned the port off. We could have logged in, and I'll show you later. We can see that the port is physically being blocked. It actually physically says looped. There's another question I saw come in.
Yeah, Aaron's the question here, does STP and LBD apply to links between stacked switches?
Okay, you can't run STP on the same ports as LDB. So it's either one or the other. Your STP will be your uplinks from a stack. Your stack is treated as a single switch. So basically, when you're turning on loopback detection, we turn it on and then we tell it what ports we want to enable for loopback detection. Yeah. Pretty much it's everything except your uplinks.
Great, thank you, Aaron. Thanks for that question. Phil, comment here from Lee. Any tech stories starting with, I was called in for support by a school, tends to be a good one. Yes, we agree with that one as well.
And especially when the school called me in directly, not through the integrator that was looking after the school.
Sure. So a question, now if I could just ask everybody with your questions, please pop them into the Q&A window. There's a couple that have come into the chat window, so I'll try and catch those, but please pop them into Q&A. Craig just asked a question here, Aaron.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can clarify this. At the start, Aaron advised that STP and loopback are mutually exclusive. And now he's saying that he uses loopback for edge ports and STP for uplinks. Please explain.
No, that's part of the best practice. So you use STP, yes, definitely use STP on your uplinks, but loopback detection on your edge ports. I mean, if you don't want to use loopback detection, you can use STP for edge ports. But if you use STP for edge ports, this is the problem here. STP can't prevent the broadcast storm on a single port, whereas loopback detection can.
Okay.
So, very valid question. Very valid.
Good. Thanks, Craig. It's a very learned question on there. Appreciate that. Dave, Orville here. Orville Dave is asking a question. Which pins of the NIC port was shorted, please? Aaron, that might be testing your memory.
Oh, to be honest, we actually didn't check. But when we opened it up and pried the connector apart, they were mashed, all just mashed. I'm surprised it didn't. I'm surprised it actually worked to even send the broadcast to them. It was an amazing, yeah. I've also had, just side notes, I've had schools where a student has gone home, raided his father's office, got a little network switch, looped it in this exact fashion here. He then taped it up under a desk, plugged the PowerPoint in, the plug back into the wall, and one cable into their network, and disconnected the actual PC, the computer, school's PC. That was fun to find. But I enabled loop. I managed, because we had a function called safeguard enabled on our switches. I was able to log into the switches while it was looped. So I turned on loopback detection, found what port it was, and we traced it back that way. And then we found, yeah, duct tape underneath a desk with a switch stuck up underneath.
There's a few other of these stories coming through. We might get to some of these right at the end of the session today.
No, sorry, yes, I should move on.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, so setting it up. Now, we can create a loop. Well, here we go. We've got a loop on one switch with the PC plugged in. We've got two cables going between two switches. That's a loop between two switches. If you do this yourself, try not to do it on a corporate network, and a standalone switch is probably better to test with, because when you do, you're going to bring down a network if it's not configured correctly. So basically, when you loop it, try logging into the switch. Odds are you can't. Also, be aware, some switches out there, when they are looped or are in a loop state and you disconnect the loop, they may not come back. Ours do, but plenty don't. Also, to edge devices that have been affected by the BPDU broadcast may not come back either, so you may have to reboot some of those. So we go into log into the switch. Layer 2 functions, because it's a layer 2 function. Spanning tree, bridge global settings, and we turn it on, and we select rapid, and we hit apply. Then we create the loop. When we do, we will see the looped port physically change from forwarding to discarding. That's how you know that port is physically looped. That's using STP. I will do this as well and show you live. Now, loopback, on the other hand, we log into now. We must, as I said before, we can't run loopback detection on the same port we've got STP enabled. So we must go and disable STP on that port. Then we go to the layer 2 functions. Now, depending on the switch, loopback detection could be in the security section, because effectively it is a security function to stop your network going down. So in this case, it's on the 1210 series, it's under layer 2 loopback detection, and we turn it on. Here we can select port-based or VLAN-based. If we do VLAN, we can put in the VLAN lists. Now that'll basically, if we use VLAN-based loopback detection, it'll do the loopback detection as well. And with the VLANs, if you had one cable that had multiple VLANs on it, it's going to just block the VLAN affected and leave all the rest of the VLANs flow. So it's very handy. Instead of bringing down 6 networks on one cable, it'll just bring down the one. And then when it is looped, it'll say the port disabled. I've actually seen them say looped as well. And you'll basically see the link lights turn out. So if you had it enabled and you went to a patch panel and there was one cable, one end of it plugged in already, and you found another end and you plugged it in and no lights come on, it may be looped and it'll tell you. It's a very handy thing to do. So now I'm going to jump in and show you how to set this up. So I'll jump into my physical switch itself. I'll just jump onto this screen and go to my web browser. So hopefully I'm still logged in. This is our 12.10.20. There we go. As people who do know me, that's an irritant. So we will exit the wizard because we don't run wizards. Here we can go, layer 2 functions. Spanning tree global settings. So we've got to enable it first. Here we're going to slow rapid and enable and apply. Now we hit apply here. Now we wait for it to come back. It takes a few seconds to enable. And got to wait for it because it's enabling it. And in the meantime, if I show you, oh, there we go, we're back. STP port settings, now they're all default at the moment. Currently we've got forwarding states on an uplink, another uplink, happy days because there's a switch above it, and a link to my network. So they're all happy, costs are good because they're high speed ones. Now, currently, if we have a look at my camera on my switches, you will see the link lights flashing as normal. So let me know if there's any black boxes you can't see. So you'll see that there, the lights are just flashing, yeah, little bits here and there. When we have a loop, all of your switch lights will be flashing in sequence and rapidly. Now, I will show you what happens afterwards when I loop the network and disable any protection, that how the lights flash rapidly. It's a bit hard with the camera. They're going to be different, but not as rapid as I'd like to see. So now I will plug in that cable. And I physically looped that switch. And hopefully I'm still on the webinar. So if I jump back into the web browser itself, you will see, okay, you should see my switch now. If I click on here, we will see this port here is discarding. So that's actually stopped my loop. Fantastic. So that's very good. That worked like a treat. Let's pop back to the Prezzo. Oh, now, sorry, I thought we were going to do a little bit on the loopback detection. So now what I'll do here, I will now disable STP. First of all, I will unplug the loop. So I've unplugged the loop. Go, that's disappeared from the mess, that's good. I'll go to STP here and go disable. And now I'll turn on loopback detection and show you the difference in state of that. Now.
Aaron, I've got a question here from
Yes.
Wayne. So what alerting would you get that a port has moved to discarding?
If you were running SNNP, the SNNP trap would send off. You'd have to do that to an external third party monitoring. But yes, you can use SNNP for that. That'll tell you this port has changed state to whatever the alert's set for. Was there any more questions with that?
I think that's it. It's another question here, but we'll get to that one at the end of the demo.
Excuse me. There we go. All right. So loopback detection. Now at the moment it's disabled. So I've just clicked enabled, port based, I'm going to select and hit apply. Now, at the moment, all disabled. So now I'm going to turn on from port 1 to 20. I'm going to turn it on. There we go. So now, when I loop it, all my loop status here is normal. So I will jump over to my switch just to show you that I'm actually doing it. There's me, there's my switch. Let's just choose a port. Okay, now you see how the lights didn't come on. If I refresh the screen here, we see disabled. They're the two ports that I physically used that are connected and looped, and it's physically disabled them. Now there is a recover time. This here will re-enable the port very briefly every 60 seconds to see if the loop has disappeared. But in this case,
Can you go back to the UI, Aaron? We're still seeing.
Sorry, that might be handy for you. Bear with me. All right, so now I'll refresh the screen, and you see these two ports are physically disabled. They're the two that I've used, and link lights weren't on. Now up here, this is the recover time I was talking about. Every 60 seconds, it'll go through, re-enable the port briefly, like a smidgen, and then test for the loop and see if it still exists. So what I'll do, I will share the screen of the switch and I'll disable loopback detection and show you what the looping LEDs look like. Right, so at the moment, they're both disabled, both off. I'm just looking at the switch here and clicking disable on this loopback detection. Now, so the lights have lit up, and I don't know how much frame rate's coming through at your end, but at my end, all link lights are flashing in sequence and very rapidly. And because I have loopback detection enabled on my network in my garage, we're still on the webinar, which is very, very handy. So technically my test VLAN is completely looped at the moment, but in saying that, we're still operational. Now,
there's just a lot of unnecessary data going through the network.
That is correct. Now, also you notice lights have settled down, and if you have a look at my screen again, we still have access to the switch. That's how quickly ours come back from a loop. Not all of them do. So just be aware of that.
What do you mean by not all of them do? As in all switches, or all vendor switches?
Not all vendor switches. Now, all of our managed switches come back that quickly, but other vendors, some don't. Some don't come back as quick, or if at all. Sometimes you've actually got to physically reboot them. I've seen a lot of that on site. There is.
I've got a couple of questions. Here. There's one here from Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Could Aaron please explain what the STP traps options are in my DGS 1100 08P? The options are new route trap and topology change trap.
Oh, your best bet. Oh, look, give me a hoy after the webinar and I'll jump in by TeamViewer and we'll go through it. Yeah, that's probably going to take a little bit too much time today.
Okay, Lee. So grab Aaron's details at the end, and get in touch with him on there. Greetings to Bernie, dialing in today from sunny Brisbane. Bernie's our account manager based in Brisbane. He says, could we use DView7 for those SNMP traps and alerts with regards to
the port change? Yes, you can.
Yeah, and I guess that's probably one of the least talked about products that we have available is our management software DView7, which is available at no charge for up to, I'd like to say 25 devices. There's no charge for that. There is a license cost if it's going into a larger network, but that's certainly something that really everybody should be having a look at.
Also, keep an eye out for DView8. That's just on the horizon.
Okay.
I'm personally impressed with it. So it's rather nice. Rather nice looking. They've done a lot of work to it.
Okay. Question here, Aaron from Felix. If I have 3 DGS 1500 series switches in a stack configuration, do I need to enable STP as best practice for the stack ports?
No. Oh, no. Well, okay, there's 2 things there. One, you can't enable STP on the stacking ports. With the 1510 series or any of our stackable series switches, as soon as you enable hardware stacking, you take those ports out of band. They're treated as sort of more of a proprietary protocol. And all of the looping type of scenario is built into that protocol. So we actually can't enable STP on those ports. And if you are uplinking from a stack to somewhere else, personally, I'd be using LACP. So multi-trunk LACP, sending that off, and when you're using LACP, you can't use STP on that port anyway.
Okay, great. Thanks, Aaron. Question here from Craig. Why is STP better than LBD for uplinks?
Well, it's just sort of best practice. It's I'm of a different. I mean, everyone's got their own opinion. I'm of a different opinion. I don't use STP on my uplinks. I will use LACP. Or if I was doing a ring topology like what we saw in the STP example, I'd be using ERPS. It's more of a faster convergence, and it's a lot faster actually, to be honest. Okay, great. It sounds like that best practice document that you've got, Aaron, is probably going to be pretty handy for lots of people. Oh yeah. Well, it's actually part of our DCNE full day training. So okay. Yeah. We go through we go through ERPS as well. So I'm sure a number of people on here today have done that course, and certainly when this COVID lockdown finishes, I'm sure there'll be a number of people that'll be wanting to get onto those courses as well. Yes, because we actually, because we do STP examples. We loop things, make a big mess. Okay, another question here from Orville. Does D-Link STP protocol recognize when a network has different brands of switches on it? For example, a Cisco core switch and D-Link in the middle, and Netgear, Ubiquiti, D-Link out at the edge. Well, look, we're on IEEE versions of STP. If you're using PVST or PVST plus, that I can't answer. We can always find, let me think, I'd have to ask someone who's done it. But no, we're IEEE based. What Cisco's done with PVST and the difference is, should be very similar, but there would be there'd be a little bit of configuration to do. Yeah, certainly. Certainly lots of benefit, Aaron. I think you'd have to agree at sticking with standards-based networking. Yeah. Because look, we'll interact with Ubiquiti, Netgear, HP, that type of scenario. But the PVST and PVST plus, I couldn't answer that one. Okay. I think you've done very well to answer that one on the spot. Right. Thanks, Orville, for your question. Question here from George. Do the D-Link switches use an ASIC chipset? Is this why the loopback recovery is so fast with D-Link? Yes, yeah. We do use an ASIC-based chipset, yes. So we use ASIC-based switching in our layer 2 switches and layer 3 switches. If we have layer 3 switches that are proper layer 3 switches. They're proper layer 3 routing in ASIC-based chips. Whereas if we've got layer 2 plus, then we're doing the switching, everything in ASIC-based, and then the actual routing in software.
Okay, that's great. Thank you from George. No problem, George. Great to have you on the webinar today. Okay, so Aaron, is there any other part of the demonstration today?
No, that's it. That's it. I'm still on the webinar, so our looping protection is working, which is fantastic.
That's lucky.
Yes, it is, especially live. But that's it for the demo.
Good stuff. Okay, if you could just advance on to the next slide.
Certainly.
So, hopefully, as a number of you, and I know a number of you have taken up these offers that we've put forward at the end of the webinars. We are running some special offers with some deep discounts on a number of our switches. The DXS 1210 switches 16-port copper switch that we have there with 50% off RRP on that one. Our very popular DGS 1210 28P, again 50% off that model as well. These are intended to be for your own use within your own organisation. Certainly if you're a reseller or MSP, system integrator, etc. And a couple of 1510 switches, a PoE and a non-PoE version of those products. So you'll receive a coupon code once you've completed the survey sent at the end, which you'll all get a copy of that via email, and you can go and redeem that through the D-Link web store. So keep a lookout for the survey, which will come through.
On that note too, I personally use the 1510 28P.
Okay.
And I've been using one of those since day one. They're good. They're very, very good.
Well,
plus I've got 10 gig uplinks to my keynote.
That doesn't come with any higher endorsement, I think, Aaron. If that's something that you're using in your house, that's something that everybody else can say, I'm using the same switch that Aaron from D-Link uses.
That's
right. Okay, all right. Next slide, if you could, please, Aaron.
Sorry, yes, I was waiting for you to do
that. Okay, so partner program, please, if you're not signed up to that, please do go and get signed up to that. There's no cost to go and join that program. So please do go and get signed on to that program, and available through distributors across both Australia and New Zealand, Ingram Micro and Cinex, and then throughout Australia, Blue Chip, EdSys, Hills, Multimedia Technology, and Pacific Datacom. Okay, we've had another couple of questions come through. While we deal with those questions, we're just going to leave our key contacts up on here. So please, if you are not across any of these contacts, take a screenshot of this or jot those details down. Just to quickly run through the team that we have available to support our customers and our partners. We've already heard today from Bernie Reisenberger, our channel manager based up in Brisbane. Bernie looks after Queensland and Northern Territory. In Sydney is Michael Crocombe, looking after New South Wales and the ACT. And down in lockdown Melbourne, we've got Colin Chamberlain, who looks after VicTaz, SA and WA. Supporting both of these gentlemen are our wonderful pre-sales engineers, Aaron Bilton, who we've heard from today, and David Urbano, pre-sales engineer based in Sydney. David, we'd love to see your smiling face on right about now, if you could. Then over in New Zealand, we have Paul Batchelor, who has just recently joined the team. So Paul, it's great to have you on board, and certainly for our team in New Zealand to be looking after us. Thanks, David. Nice to see you this morning. Of course, in both countries, we've got a 0800 or 1300 partner priority support number that does get you directly through to our level 2 and level 3 support teams. So please make sure you keep a copy of this handy. You can skip the queue and get to talk directly through to our support teams. And if you're not yet signed up as a partner, please do so as well. If you're doing a catch up on this session, or you're doing a catch up on any of our other sessions, you can head off to our YouTube channel, go and search for D-Link Australia or D-Link New Zealand within YouTube. Click on playlists, and there's a playlist in there called webinars, and you can catch up on all of the D-Link webinars which we have run. Okay, a couple more questions, Aaron, that have come in. I'm just going to shoot these. Okay. Orville asked a question here. Are any of our new switches coming through as fanless switches?
If there's no requirement for the fan, they'll typically only have one or none. If they're PoE, they're going to have a fan because of the power supplies. So there are fanless, yes, but they're more lower switch port count.
Yeah, so particularly for PoE switches, I think all of our PoE switches are over and above anything that's got 16 ports or more. We'll have a fan on board. So things like our DGS 1100 08P, DGS 1210 10P, that these switches don't have fans on them, but any of our 24 port products, so like a 1100 24P, 1210 28P, 28MP, 1510 28P, these all have fans simply because there's more power that they require.
And basically the power supply is inside the unit, so there has to get the heat out.
Yep.
The ones that have external power supplies, like the lower port count ones, they're fanless. Okay. But it's all on the spec sheet in case one needs it.
Excellent. Okay, Craig here and has got another question here. And Aaron, maybe you can, I don't know if you can see the questions down on your end down there.
I'll see if it doesn't make a mess in your screen. Let's see. I can see chat. No, I can't see that. Oh, Q&A is okay.
So Craig's got a question. So just summarizing, lots of acronyms in here. So enabling loopback on edge ports and LACP and ERPS for uplinks. Don't use STP, RSTP or MSTP for uplinks.
Correct.
And does the best practice guide, does that cover all of that, in particular MSTP?
We cover MSTP in the physical full day training. Well, yes, because if you ask me for the guide, I'll take it that slide as well and explain that for you as well. And it shows a double loop for multiple VLANs.
Yep. Okay, Craig. What we'll do, I think you're based in Sydney, so we might get David to give you a call today to go through all of this. So hopefully that's okay. David, you're right to give Craig a ring. Terrific. All right, no problem. Okay, a question here from Don. Greetings to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Don. Aaron, I'm not clear about when to use STP and when to use loopback protection. Sorry if I missed it. Oh, naughty boy, Don, you should have been on at the start. Could you please say a bit more about that?
That would be repeating the webinar again, Don.
Okay. All right.
Anyway.
So link off to the YouTube channel. Perhaps you can catch it there. If you can give us a summary for a minute or so, Aaron.
Well, basically, STP, Don, use it for your uplinks. So if you're uplinking to another switch, to another switch, to another switch, to avoid a loop coming back, like you may have experienced, yes, we use STP on uplinks, ports only. Whereas loopback detection, we will use on edge ports. Anything that's at the edge of the network that typically won't cause a loop, we put into loopback protection. So hopefully that clears that up.
Okay, terrific. Don says, thank you. Okay, does the best practice guide, is that covering ERPS?
No.
Okay.
Basically, ERPS, it's in the training. Yeah, and we go through it in the training.
Okay, sounds like
we can always we can always cut it out of the training and send it through as a PDF, but it's sort of defeating the purpose of going to the training. So.
Yep.
But ERPS is becoming, it's been around for ages, don't get me wrong, but it's reared up again. So it was used an awful lot 10 years ago, and I've put it into youth detention centres on redundant fibre ring networks. And it's come back 10 years later. And now it's being used in building automation networks, for example, in large high rises with our 1510 series. So we can do multiple ring fibre as redundancy, because if you're using building automation, fire suppression systems, that type of scenario on physical networks, you want it to be redundant. So it's a good redundancy mechanism to use it with.
I think just on one of our webinars that we ran last week, there was Wayne, who's asked a couple of questions today, was there saying that certainly a lot of value in attending the full day training courses that we run. If I can paraphrase you, Wayne, hopefully you're okay with that, there was obviously a lot of information that's imparted, and I guess you don't know what you don't know, but there was a lot of valuable information that had helped him go and troubleshoot some things out on sites that he would have really had great difficulty trying to figure out, particularly around wireless and I guess around things like loops and so on as well, which are all covered in those courses. So certainly can't commend those courses to you enough for giving up some time. Aaron, what's the cost of those courses for a D-Link partner?
Free.
Free, right.
We will give you a wonderful code that'll just make that course free. And it's full day and it's catered lunch.
Right, and how much does the lunch cost and morning tea and afternoon tea?
That's all included.
All included. Terrific. Well, sounds like a great deal. So hopefully within the second half of this year, we can get back to these classroom sessions, and there's been enough today to whet everybody's appetite with regards to some of the technical aspects around switching. It's a good question here from Rob. Is there any information on DView? Yes, we can get some information out to you. David will be in touch, or Bernie, with information on DView. Question here: do I run it on my server? Do I run it locally? How do I do that?
Yes. Now, when you install it, the license for DView is associated with the MAC address of the network card you're using. So if you're going to put it on a VM server and you want to transfer it off, that's going to be a bit of an issue because your MAC address is going to change. So if you're going to put it on something, make it on something you're going to continue to keep using.
Is it better to install it locally at a customer site, to install it somewhere on some sort of local machine or something like that, as opposed to having it on your laptop and running around from network to network?
Oh yeah, no, it's made for something to continuously monitor. So okay. Yeah, definitely put it on a server related type of scenario.
Yep.
Sorry, that's took the question the wrong way.
Okay, all right. That just about wraps up our questions. I did say there was a couple of comments that I was going to get back to. A good story here from John. A school that he worked at, there was a student stripped an Ethernet cable, put the ends onto a 9-volt battery and blew up a switch. You cannot imagine how many random things kids do.
That's also like when I covered PoE. If you have passive PoE, PoE with no intelligence, and you use an injector, it's like if you put the data and the power cable back into a switch, it lets the smoke out.
Yeah, right.
Yes. I've seen a security installer do this. They plugged it into port 1, it let the smoke out. They thought, oh, it's not working. They plug it into port 3, they let the smoke out. Oh, it's not working. They continued to do it till the switch was dead. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
A comment here from George. This is about him owning up to something. George, I don't know what the statute of limitations is here, but anyway, we'll put it out there. When I was a kid at school, I looped the network by wall-to-wall loop, RJ45 to RJ45. The IT guys thought it was pretty cool. That's maybe what they said to your face. I'm not sure how happy they were.
That's like anyone who used to deal with the old coax networks with the BNC cables.
Yep.
If you got a pin and you pushed it through the coax, it would short the center conductor to the outer pin, and you get a pair of sidecars and cut the pin off. And it's like, good luck trying to find that shorted cable.
Yeah, yeah. Question here from Glenn. He says, "Oh, I've had the exact same additional switch used in a government department that Aaron knows the outcome of."
Oh.
Okay. Oh yes, Lee says here the USB stick bottle openers. They are an added bonus to the training course as well. Somebody just got an invitation from Cisco inviting them to training for next week at a cost. So there you go. Yeah, so George says he was popular for a little while. Yeah, George, good story. Yes, every starting with schools we look after, or this once happened at a school. There's all sorts of interesting things that can happen, and students are yeah, they get bored. There's I had a reseller just recently. He's got a pilot wanting to run some sort of IoT trial out at a university that he needs a 4G router for to connect to this, and he said, how hackable is this device? And I said, oh, I think it's pretty secure. And there was some test results of some penetration testing that was done at a third-party lab that I sent him. I said, why are you particularly worried about this? And he says, oh, I don't think it's going to be anything malicious. It's just going into a university with lots of very smart people who get very bored and just like breaking and hacking things for fun. So yes, schools are a good source of storytelling. Okay, so I don't think we've got any other last minute questions coming up. So I think we are just about ready to conclude the webinar. So great, great. Aaron, thank you for sharing all of that information. Very technical. Lots of acronyms that are in there, and there's certainly...
Yes. Sorry if they've lost over a bit, but feel free to attend the training. We go through a very large explanation of what the acronyms are.
Look, I think that it's certainly a very key part, and I guess one of the and I guess this is part of our networking fundamentals course, that understanding spanning tree, understanding loops and how to fix them, but probably more importantly as to how to prevent them and how to go and troubleshoot these sorts of things as well. I've heard a story from a SMB IT Professional Sydney meeting just a couple of weeks ago. Well, in fact, probably more a couple of months ago, we were actually meeting in person, where there was the best part of 3 days to discover that the entire network problems that this very large organisation was having was because of a simple loop of a clerical assistant that had gone and plugged in a data cable into a port in a wall that she thought was unplugged and was doing everybody a favour. But of course, it wasn't quite the case. So identifying these things is really, really important. Networks we rely on more so than ever, and people, they need to have their networks up and running. So we're here to help you, give you the tools to be able to go and be able to assist your customers and to assist them as quickly as possible. Just one final question that's come here from Lee. Don't know the answer to this one, and I'm sure if we don't have one available ourselves, there's probably some others that would be worth recommending. Aaron, when can we expect to see a D-Link packet tracing app? And if there's no D-Link one, what do you use?
Oh, I'd be using Wireshark. And no, D-Link doesn't have one. Well, not that I'm aware of. But yeah, I'd be using Wireshark.
Okay.
That is the tool.
All right. Terrific. Okay. Well.
Simulators. Oh, okay. Lee's mentioned here he meant for simulations. We have had in the past, as in web graphical user interface type of simulations. Oh, like Cisco Packet Tracer. No, we haven't got that, no. But the actual, yes, like the Cisco Packet Tracer version, no, we haven't got that.
Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for attending today. It's been great attendance. We hope that you've learned something today. Please keep a lookout for our next series of networking fundamentals courses that we're just working on at the moment in being able to deliver it in an online format. Until then, please stay safe and keep well, and we look forward to seeing you in a webinar again soon, and hopefully face-to-face in a full-day DCNE training course before too long as well. It's goodbye from myself, Phil Tarbox, and goodbye from Aaron, and goodbye from David.